Laura. Hi, Charlie. So we've got about 3 hours and a number of topics. Is there anything on the agenda that folks have a question about, or anything folks would like to add before we get started? And we have 3 hours. I'll try to manage our time to the discussion, but don't want to short shrift anything. These are important conversations today. But knowing it's a Saturday afternoon, some folks aren't feeling very well, we'll try to be efficient. But again, these are important topics and don't want to lose the opportunity to have rich, robust conversations. So the first item we have up is the board assessment results, self-assessment results. So really appreciative of the input that everyone gave in the results. And the format, I thought the report back from IASB was really helpful, just in terms of the average of the responses, and then the collection of all of the free response items. What I thought I would do is just kind of summarize some of the good things that came out in the survey, because the board is doing some things well, and I think for me. And then we'll open it up for conversation. I just want to start off though with the positives. And I think for me the highest rated item was that we all feel a responsibility to help the district be successful. And I mean, maybe that sounds like a no-brainer and an easy thing, but that notion of good intention and that we care and we're here and feel responsibility is, for me, I mean, fantastic. That for me is a really great way to start our conversation. Our board meetings are open and people can participate and hear things well. We do a pretty good job in terms of our legislative priorities to ISB, and I thought that was positive. We get regular updates and progress reports from the district, which is good, and how we're tracking against our goals. We've got good policies around use of our facilities. That obviously that means that we care about our community and want to make use of our facilities for civic use. Our policies are updated regularly, so yay P&G, doing a good job of staying on track with our policies and keeping them current. And the other thing I thought was actually a little highlight was the item around we provide quality education in an environment of financial constraints. That to me suggests the board has done a good job of figuring out priorities, making sure that we fund those priorities, and that we do have to have some of those hard conversations around budget. We're balancing those priorities well, and so focus on education quality. So I thought those were all really positive and good kind of foundational points to work from as we look at some of the areas of opportunity for our board going forward. But again, I'm just going to go back to that very first one, that we all feel a responsibility to help our district be successful. That's why we're all here. I think each of us probably have our own personal reasons for serving on the board, but at the end of the day, it's all about making a positive difference for us. So that's really fantastic. So with all that, I mean, are there other things people would add to their observations on the things that came out of the assessment that highlighted the things the board is doing well? Other things to add to that? No? Okay. So what I thought we could do next is maybe just starting with if you've got the assessment results in front of you, it was broken into various categories. I thought we could just kind of work our way through each of those preliminary categories, and if people have observations or comments that they want to make about them. Because if we go through each of these, and if we have a goal around coming up with some priorities for ourselves as a board in terms of action planning from a development perspective, I thought a quick review of each of these areas would be helpful, lay the groundwork, and then we can kind of try to distill down into what we think our priorities of focus might need to be. Does that sound like a reasonable way to go through? Just a little bit of structure. So the first one on legislative leadership, we already mentioned that one of the positives was around our getting information to IASB in terms of our legislative priorities. Any other comments on this particular one, things that people would want to know around our work here?
It's straightforward. I mean, I the ones that we have a very high average, I think we're doing great in. And I mean, we could talk about ways to improve that. I think we need to maybe have a lengthier conversation in the areas where our average is pretty abysmal.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but again, just don't want to leave any opportunity out for each of these topics to add some thought process. But I would agree with you, this is probably not one of our top 5 priorities from an improvement standpoint. We certainly don't want to go backwards on this one since we're doing okay, but, okay, so moving on to the next one, planning. This one was also a higher average. There were a couple, though, of the individual questions, and that had lower responses that, I'm just curious if folks have any comments or reactions around the whole planning process. The three bottom ones, the board's an active participant, we consider new educational practices and policies and planning for change, and that we provide a vision for our educational future.
I mean, that can be low, perhaps because you have 4 new board members that haven't actively worked with the remaining 3 board members to come with a united superintendent and other direct administrators for a vision going forward. We're still operating under the previous board vision that maybe perhaps didn't have a lot of buy-in. So I mean, for me, that sort of, I was thinking, looking at those results that could be surrounding that. Mm-hmm. Now, if we take this a year from now, we're still low after going through the process of planning. I think that might be cause of concern. But for me, I know just remembering how I rated those 3, it played a lot in, well, I don't have anything to do with where our vision going forward.
Yeah. And I was happy that we actually spent some time working on vision. And so we've got something in place. And to your point, Bettina, if this one is still that low next year, then clearly we didn't.
Well, we took this the week after we had that visioning.
Yeah,
so,
something like that,
when we had just brainstormed that and put it into what, so I think,
The one that the board considers new educational practices and policies and planning for change, this one struck me as we talked a lot about, our education committee, the board as a committee as a whole, really focusing on that third Tuesday, trying to be in different schools, hearing what's going on in different buildings, and that might be a way, if we continue that practice this year, that might be a way for us to get more insight into what's happening, that then could help us from a planning process. So that was one of my observations.
I think what we've talked about with boundaries, no, not boundaries, that's not the right way to frame it. As we talked about equity between our elementary schools, I think we're embarking upon this very thing. Mm-hmm. Because I think that what I've heard is that we want to be open to some different ideas in different places. And so this is something that we have an opportunity to really demonstrate that we want to take some of these new ideas that are being tried elsewhere and let's try some new things here. Instead of just doing the same old thing, just changing boundaries as the means to change equity in our schools, equity in terms of educational experience. Again, like Regina said, a year from now, let's see if we've tried some new things and if we've delivered on that.
Well, I know sitting in that castle presentation at the Southeast, that, and I mean, that was exciting, here's a new thing, if it's working, can we do more of that? And so that was well after we took the survey. So hopefully, we are embarking on that, and we're going to have more opportunities to say, oh, we love this, and this is right in line with what, or helps, I know that for me, helped open my eyes to what's available and what's out there.
And if the results are positive, how to start, expanding it, if that's something that's working, how to work on expanding it. Okay, so planning. We'll probably, we come back to, there was we had meetings later in this deck, and for me, this whole meeting structure, the topics that we choose to cover for priority perspective should relate pretty closely to what our plans are. Our district goals and priorities should be reflected in our meeting agendas, but we can come back to that when we get to the meeting item. Motivation. Any reactions to this one? Again, this responsibility one was really super high. That felt good. I didn't feel as good that we scored pretty low on serving as a key advocate for students. That was a little disappointing from a response standpoint.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I look at it and there's, half the response, or 40% of the responses were 6s. The
Yeah.
average is really low, which tells me that, there's probably a certain group that kind of all went in the direction, and then because we did have this cast a wider net across larger folks, then it makes me wonder if, how that broke down. Did
Yeah.
one particular group all kind of feel the same way, and everybody else was all over the map? Because that's what the numbers look like. So that's a weird one.
Yeah, Lori raised a
The average
good
is low,
point.
but there's 6 6s.
Yeah, Lori, you raised a good point by emails that we don't know what the board responses were versus everybody else. We're all in together. And to your point, if the board all said 6s, yay, we're doing a great job serving as student advocates, but then the principals and the administration responded, don't think that's what's happening, or vice versa. I mean, there's a real disconnect potentially that broke down.
Either way, it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? Either, if the vision from the outside looking at us is bad, we all think we're doing a good job, we're really failing. And if it's the other way around, we don't feel like we're being able to advocate is probably a better way to say it than
Yeah.
not being advocates, but that means we have work to do too. So regardless, it is just a weird kind of dynamic of how those scores all broke down. And I think there's definitely somewhere that needs attention.
But even with that, I mean, not to pick on the lonely one, but 6 of us feel as though we are serving as advocate. And my biggest concern, I mean, if the 6 is board members, great. But at the same time, it's like, oh my goodness, where's that 7th? I would have loved to see 7 responses. I don't know if you're tracking what I'm saying, in a similar area. Meaning that at least we all have the same train of thought that we're here to serve as advocates for students. So if that 6 is representative of our board, then at least one of us may feel as though we're not. And even to what Sean is speaking, even if it is all of us and everybody else see us in a different light, we have some work to do. Because even though we may have this assumption that we're serving as advocates for students, that's not how we're appearing to the public.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that I don't know how it all broke down. I assume the ISB kind of put together these categories and whatnot, that particular question comes under motivation, right? Because with all of the smaller numbers, the lower ratings, it questions the motivation of everything we do, right? If people are looking at it saying that we're all making decisions, but it's not an advocacy of students, that questions why we're making those decisions, what our motivation is. And that's scary to me that anybody would feel that our decision making is not for the avocation of students. I would feel somewhat better actually if the lower scores were board members, because they feel like they're just not able to do it and they want to.
Yeah, me too.
But if you look at it, they're just not doing it, whether it's us or anybody else, that makes me feel all oogie. I don't like it.
So let's hang on to that one, this advocacy for students is something we need to think about potentially. I mean, that's why we're here. And if that's the low scoring, regardless of who rated us in which way, that's something we probably should be thinking about. Policy, we administratively do a good job. The lowest on
I'm
here.
sorry, before we go, my only other observation of you enjoy performing activities on the school board.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to point that one out. There's no consensus. I mean, it's just all of, at least 2 people really do. 2 people really enjoying school board activities, whoever that you is. I just had to, and one hates
Some of
it.
this, we're just running into the problem, we don't have enough.
No, I know.
Like, the key advocate, like, we have no idea what the public thinks. We know what 10, 4, 30, what,
True.
however, how many people took this?
18, I
So we don't really, it's, because if I say, like, on that one, or enjoy performing, I mean, it's just hard, because, not everybody's gonna answer that, because not everybody's on the
Right.
board, so.
Although 10 people did answer it.
Yeah, so it's just hard
We
to
have
get.
some more members. We don't know about.
Yeah, so maybe there's a caution of overinterpretation based on the limited
There's a
data
lot of
set.
qualifiers
Yeah.
that you put in there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Performing all the activities
Oh,
of the
that's
school
funny,
board.
10 people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I read it that way,
yeah,
even though the all is not there.
yeah. But the joy factor, maybe we can make the joy factor go up when we do this again next
I'd
year.
love to see that go up.
Let's work on the joy factor. So I'm gonna move us on to policy. This one, rate, again, average, pretty good. The low two, the board operates according to written policies. And the last one, for me, is the biggest one we should probably think about. It's all around how we engage the community in the work that we do. And the next item is community public relations, and there's some pretty low ones in that one as well. And so, I think, as I was going through this, there may be a theme around engagement, and we've talked about from a vision standpoint, that was something that was really important to us, right? And so, what's our process? How do we make sure we've got the diverse voices coming into our policy-making, decision-making, that kind of thing, in a way that, makes sense and helps us do a better job? Other thoughts, comments on this particular theme, policy?
When I first looked at that last one there, the 3.4 average, I look at that one as it's going to have low scores for a lot of different reasons and coming from a lot of different viewpoints, because it may be, I give it a low score because we don't engage community members. And maybe, I don't know if our ICEA folks took it as well. They may say we don't ask faculty
Yeah.
for engagement,
Yeah.
right? And, maybe Paul says we don't ask students for stuff, right? Like, we could all give it a low score from a very specific point. Again, it probably doesn't really matter what that viewpoint is. It tells you that engagement across the board is not strong enough. But I think it would be short-sighted to target fixing one of those things, thinking that everybody gave the low score because it's community, right? You know what I mean? Obviously, we need to have better engagement with the community, but probably all of the pieces that are in that question, I think, is fair to say.
Yes, yes.
Again, a couple things that I think have happened in the meantime that I frankly don't exactly remember what I scored all these. I answered them honestly, how I was feeling at the time, and so I felt at the time. I know that we're going to have a trimester-long course, primarily because of students and actions that they did this year. Now, we didn't seek that. It came to us, but I think we responded in a way that was validating them and listening to them. And just at, because Charlie's here, our equity meeting the other night, we're going to have, Charlie, how many applicants were there? 30-some total?
30 plus, yeah.
And a small group had narrowed that down to, say, 12, and we went through each one of them. It took most of the meeting, frankly, and at the end of it, just somebody at the committee was like, well, because we were going through all of these applications, they said, well, that's a student, and there's another student. And then, Charlie, you actually brought up, well, there's a teacher on here, and why didn't the small committee choose the teacher? And here's another paraeducator, which led the whole group to just shift and say, you know what, we're going to include the teachers and the students and one other person, because we think those voices are really important. Kind of for this very thing, because we knew we were missing faculty perspectives, and those are the people who are on the front lines, and then students who are and so I think that, to me, that was just something that came out of that. I was the only board member there, but was very pleased that the committee wanted to go.
I think what you're talking is a little bit different than actually the policy question. And the way that I read that question is, before drawing up a new policy. I can't think of the last new policy we drew
Been a
up,
while.
besides maybe RAM or inclement weather.
Was that policy on the inclement weather, or was that just our guidelines?
Guidelines.
Guidelines, yeah.
So I mean, I mean, we may change some policies, but I can't think of a new policy that we've come up with.
I guess I'd look at policy as in anything that's coming out of the board in a decision-making process, whether it goes into written policy format. And I can see the distinction for sure.
Like all the questions are a policy, like the board operates according to its written policies, the board holds the superintendent for implementing its board policies, so that's how I read that question, it's all about our actual policies.
Well, I think it's ISB too, so think about that too, because IASB is a very policy governance driven organization, and so I think that's the way that they're contextually framing it when they put the questions out there too.
I see that for sure on, when it specifically says board operates according to written policies. I mean, that seems pretty explicit. I guess that last one, as an example, the bell schedule change was not written policy, right? Like, it's not part of the plan, but it's
Board
a
action
big
on lots of
change
community
that-
input on
You know
that.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and that was all, I mean, we had students, we had faculty, we had community members. That was-
things like that, I
Mhm.
probably took into consideration myself when I was answering
Sure.
the last question specifically.
I wonder if there's some, I know, for me, I'm learning, like, to your point, Paul, like, I'm still trying to figure out what's policy, what's just a good action,
I know.
what's just a
Trying to figure that
practice.
too.
And when you read our actual policies, it's not like it's an easy thing to read or it's clear. I mean, just the nepotism
page
thing
turner.
was 3 different,
You gotta look all over.
you gotta
for
look
it.
all over, right? Thanks.
You're one of the ones that love all the board stuff. You were one of the 2.
So I think that's some work I
Yeah.
think we will do and need to do, is just come to understand what is a policy versus an appendix versus a,
Oh, yeah.
So maybe if we do the survey again, maybe some feedback here is that something like that, we ought to clarify.
The
Do we
question
mean
will-
policy
Yeah.
or do we mean board decisions?
Yeah, that's good. It's, yeah, some people broader, some narrow, yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm gonna note there were some, well, we can cover the comments. I mean, there were some written comments around board members following policies that also might come out in board norm discussion. We've got time today to go through the norms, and I think we should maybe that's a good place to cover that kind of thing. Anything else on policy? Community public relations. So this, back to the last conversation, Sean, you were thinking policy might be a bit bigger and actions or other things. The second to the last one, the board solicits input from all segments of the community in establishing goals. For me, there's a theme, whether it's in community or faculty or student input on policy, or that community input on goals, or community input on our action plan, to me, it feels like there's a theme of engaging and bringing in these voices and helping guide us in our policy decision-making and goal-setting work. This one just reinforced that theme for me.
yeah, the input, the broad input
Yeah.
seems to be really important on those.
Yeah.
That's not to minimize the importance of that one, but that is a tough thing to do in practice, to get input from communities broad geographically and diverse as our school district when it comes to goals, right? And that's a very specific kind of tangible, high-end thing that we're trying to create these goals, and then everything we do is supposed to support that. So having a broad base in mind when you're doing that is great, but you're going to have 5,000 different opinions on what the goals should be to try and narrow that down. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I'm just saying that's a very difficult thing to ask in regards to goals specifically, district goals.
You just can't do it all. And so when you get the input, you run the risk of gathering input and then not being able to do everything that people are asking you to do. So there's a thread in the needle there. It's not easy.
I mean, I think it'll be nice to see what comes out of the special ed stuff right now, because that's something that
Yeah?
is not even kind of required, certainly by the state, to get any
No.
input on
No.
our service delivery plan, right? And most districts
Don't.
certainly
So
don't.
So maybe this is, that actually, I didn't even connect, that's here, that's,
Yeah,
And it's
I mean,
drilling
yeah.
down into, to your point, instead of just casting a, hey, everybody tell us what you think. I mean, we're going really specifically to staff and parents that are participating in the program, so it's not someone's hypothetical view of how does the program work for a kid, but how does it work for my kid? How does it work for me as a teacher in that classroom, kind of thing. So we ought to, I'm hoping we get some really good actionable information out of
Because
it.
it's email, but we're doing some mailers too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we're trying some
Yeah.
different ways to get,
Mhm.
because some of it is you can try all you want, and sometimes you still aren't going to get input because people or they don't feel comfortable or they don't.
They're actually asking if it just happens to be your IEP is up right now and you're having an IEP meeting in there, they're asking them at the IEP meetings if they would please fill this out when they're done.
that's good,
So
Yeah.
that's good.
try to encourage folks that might have a sense of immediacy, because I just did my IEP.
And how
So,
do it turn out?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
By the way, side note, will we be sending a reminder before that closes?
On the special ed one?
Survey?
Yeah, I think the way they've got it set up, it's supposed to have some regular set of reminders that go
Okay.
out.
I think that's
Yeah.
great.
I'm not sure if it's every 5 days or, they were talking about that. Beth on Steenkamp was talking about not wanting to ping people too often, but make sure that we get a couple of reminders in before it closes.
And with the community public relations one, the last question, I think, has some questions for me. Is it, I mean, it was a very low rating, and so for me, I was curious, do people view the board balance more heavily swayed that we don't balance the two, or that we're more one-sided in our decision-making, that we're, so that, for me, is a serious cause of concern, because I think that's another delicate balance that you have to take, because none of us are professionals in education. I mean, with the exception of JP, he's a teacher, so he has a better grasp of it, but none of us truly understand how some of these policies can impact, and we have to rely on sometimes the recommendations of the professionals and the consultants. So it's interesting to, I wish we had more detail on, are we seen as disregarding that information and going more with the community wheel, or how is that
Or
seen?
or discounting community
Yeah.
and just rubber stamping what a consultant comes in and is paid to do, and we follow the consultant? Or are we just, yeah, it's
Maybe for next time, we could tease that out in the questions and ask, because yeah, if we don't balance it, well, is it which way? It's
Right.
not balanced.
And I think we would want to have a balance. I mean, rightfully so, when we're presented with information, and I've seen almost everyone do this, question, well, what if we did this or that? It's not necessarily always, okay, we're going to go 100% with what you're telling us. So in just a short period of time that I've served on the board, I've seen quite a few of us try and balance that.
Much like the one I talked about earlier, I think it is perception, or, not perception, but kind of your background when you're answering that question, because so there's 6 people there that gave it a 3. It could be 3 people think that we pay more attention to the consultants, and 3 people say we pay way more attention to the community, right?
Sure.
It totally could be. It may, in practice, maybe we do exactly right down the middle, 50-50, but if your perception is whatever it is, you will never have enough. be a good number.
Well, and the wishes, needs, and desires of the community are not homogeneous.
Yeah,
It's not like the community has one idea.
no, there's no consensus there, right? Okay, I'm gonna move on to board meetings. These next few start getting into some of the ones that we've got more work to do potentially, so, maybe I scrolled too far. So board meetings, I mean, the average wasn't bad, but there's some pretty low ones in here. Just in the three that are below 3, the board spends the majority of its time in education programs and outcomes. The board functions as a policy board who does not make administrative decisions. There's a rational relationship between how long the board spends on an agenda item and the importance of the item.
Let me just ask about the highest scoring one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the board knows if we can be heard or not. Because I know when I watched the TV back in the day, it's sometimes very hard. If you're not speaking right into that mic, it's very hard to hear at home. You know, it's almost like mumble, mumble, mumble. And so,
Yeah, that's fair. I think as I remember answering that one, it's from experience in the room. I
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
thinking about the TV and at home watchers, thinking more about people physically here. But clearly this is a whole group of folks.
And keep in mind, remember, IASB provides this tool for all boards, and the majority of the boards in Iowa meet in a school library somewhere.
oh, right.
They're not mic'd up. The library isn't set up as a meeting space, so lots of times you got people in kind of different places in the room. So I'm not sure, but my supposition is that that's part of the process, because you go to some of those meetings and it's really hard to hear the board members when you're physically present because they're not mic'd up and they're not in a good meeting space.
Well, this is.
Yeah.
Podium for community comments.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
It would
the
be
one
so
with-
nice, so, because like city councils do that, and it's just, sorry to be aside. It's just like.
And we have one.
Be able to put their-
We've got 3 of them
We
in
just
this
have the
room.
music.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so just, I
So
don't
all
want
we
to
gotta
take.
do is wheel one to
Yeah.
the center aisle. And when it was at Saban, which dates me, speakers would go to the side podium and speak. And the rest of the board somewhere in the podium like right up here.
It's just, it's a minor thing, but I think it would just be more conducive for this. We've talked about it, and I just continue to forget to mention it.
We always talk about it as soon as we show up to the meeting.
Yeah,
and
it's
we're
like, oh, I forgot. Yeah.
Before we go all the way down to the bottom ones, which
Yeah,
needs
this-
some addressing, one right about in the middle, it's got a 4.3 average. If you look at the
Well prepared.
board members are well prepared for board meetings. You've got 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, all over the place. Well, number one, that tells me the board members don't think board members are prepared. Otherwise, we have that 6 or 7 in one
right.
spot and a bunch of other stuff. So that's not good, but else is, other people don't feel that we're well prepared either, and that's a problem. We should at the very least be prepared to have a meeting when we're having meetings. It's not like they're a surprise, we know when they're happening. So that one, well, the average is higher than a lot of them. I don't want that to get lost in looking at the really low ones,
Hold
but
that.
that is not good.
Hold that for board norms. That's a board norm topic, I think.
I mean, the one right below that surprises me a little bit about the score being as low as it is for the meeting conducted in a business-like manner, because I think it is. I mean, at least the ones that I felt like I've been in have
Yeah.
been pretty good that way.
Again, we did this, how many meetings have we had since we took this?
Well, we've had that many since we took it.
3?
Yeah.
4?
But there's 4 that are in the 2 zone there, and then so clearly there's a sense that we're not very businesslike. It could be something that we work on. Some of the others that we don't want to lose, I don't think, is because this stuff came out in the comments a lot. Board focused on its discussion on issues of their personalities. Board members are polite and treat each other as well as school personnel with respect during the meeting. There was a lot of comments on those kinds of things. There was one comment that said we're not nice to each other. it would be read through the comments anyway, I mean, that kind of gets at that. So I think we need to have some more conversation about that stuff too, and I think it gets highlighted in some of the other themes in the survey as well as we keep working our way through.
Yep, us not spending the majority of our time on education programs.
That's a big issue. That one's a big, giant issue. And again, I'm super happy about the third Tuesday in the school education committee of the full board, having the opportunity to talk about education, what's working, what's not, and drilling down, having time for real deep conversation.
Well, and that was my first ed committee meeting, but I've heard, I think from two different people, that was the biggest one they've ever.
Really?
The most attendance and the most people at the table. And teachers didn't used to be at the table, is that?
Yes, they have been.
No, we've had teachers at the table.
Yeah.
Well, what was Brady talking about? Like, now that we're all three of us are sitting there at the table, Brady mentioned something.
There
When I was
were.
on the board, I went to your guys' education committee meetings, and there were teachers on the board.
Yes,
We changed that when Phil and I came on, and it's been that structure for the last 2 years. And
But
it's
Yeah, before that, it was kinda like an
generally always been that.
invite
Are you
thing,
talking
if
about
the
what he
board-
said at Tuesday meeting?
Yeah.
Because he had a table, they have seats at the table
I think
now.
that's somebody at
That
committee as well.
Brady
Yeah.
Brady was
He
talking
was talking
about
about
that the
that.
student representatives now have a nameplate, the ISB.
You're not wrong there.
Our
He said
teachers
that
have.
He brought up the
Because they had 3 ICs.
He said, we're really glad that the three of us are there now at every meeting.
Well, but no, we've always had teachers as part of the ed committee. Tom used to run it
Okay.
that way, so we had a 33-year veteran as chair of it. So, yeah, it's, we've always tried to make the attempt to do that. And I think now with the leadership that we have too, and a willingness to add others to the conversation, better moving forward. Because there will be times that we'll want to bring in other voices to be a part of that discussion.
So the spending our time on education programs and then how much time we spend on it relative to the importance, I kind of see those two going hand in hand. More as a thought exercise than anything else. If we're not spending time on education programs and we're spending time on non-important things, what are those things that we're spending our time on?
Yeah, because that one
There
is
was a
5
reason people gave that the
points.
low score. So what are we spending all of our time on if it's not what we're supposed to be doing? Is there anything we can pinpoint? Because it's going to be hard to fix it for me, kind of amorphous feeling is that, yes, we don't spend enough time talking about educational outcomes. But then when I think about it, I was like, God, everything I've talked about has been about educational outcomes. But maybe off on a tangent somehow. So I'm trying to figure out, I can't pinpoint the one thing I would say, that's what we need to eliminate so that we're spending more time on the right stuff. I can't grasp it, so I'm hoping somebody else can point at something.
Well, clearly there's a very big, strong perception that went up. And so,
Right.
As we think about the structure of our board meetings, we talk about district goals, how much time do we want to spend on those goals, what are the nature of the updates, I don't know. If we can, I'm just thinking out loud, because we're not really going to know with the data that we have, what really is.
And maybe I'm
missing.
jumping ahead, we're
But,
addressing problems and I'm trying to figure out a way to fix that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Because,
But-
but I think as we get very, very, we're very clear on what our goals are, then can you input to help us figure out what our goals should be for a year, so we're very transparent and folks that have the time to participate. And then clearly map our goals to sort of action plans and themes of work, and then we do the regular check-ins against progress, and again, it's just a very transparent, we've agreed, these are our goals, so these are the things that we're going to talk about this year, and maybe there's better correlation that we're doing what we said we would do. We said these are our priorities, and that's what we're working on. I don't know. We're solutioning right now. I'm with you on that.
I would think the one thing that comes to my mind, I guess, in the end it still goes to educational outcomes, is facilities, right? Like, that dominates, or has in the past dominated a lot of the topics. So I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
piece that people are latching onto. We're talking about buildings all the time and not so much what's happening in them,
Yeah.
which is not untrue, right? So we can't, I don't know if there's other things,
Well,
but
if
that's
we-
something we.
and if we move down into, once we get down into like the communications and board superintendent staff relations and some of the comments that might be associated with those items, there's written comments suggesting that board members micromanage and focus on too administrative stuff and not enough on policy and education. So I don't know, I'm just speculating, maybe it's something in there too. But I'm with you, it's hard to tease that one out just on the response. Clearly, there's a perception that we're not spending enough time on the right stuff. We'll have to figure it out. Decision-making. We got some work to do on this one. Though we do a good job with financial constraints, so that made me feel better.
Again, I'd kind of like to know who answered what, but the second one, I'm glad to see that a good number are good rates on those, the board members voting their convictions. But there's still a few that really feel that that is not true. And maybe you kind of write it off as, well, I think they made the wrong decision, so they didn't vote their conviction. But I'd like to think we're at least looked at as we're voting the way we feel is the right thing to do. 10 people feel pretty strongly that we're doing that, so that's encouraging to me. Because I feel like you're nothing if you're not being true to yourself. So that's an important one to me, and I was glad to see that one was a reasonably high number.
The one right below that one, I think, might be related to the other item around board members not doing their homework or doing their homework or preparing for the meeting. But some of this other stuff in here starts getting at some of our core kind of board development, team building, trust issues. The last two, in particular, differences and disagreements between members of the board are exhibited as normal and worked through after they've been allowed to continue. I think when we get into the norms discussion, there's some stuff probably we should talk about there. And then this last one, the majority decisions of the board are supported by board members, even when individual views may differ. For me, I think we need to talk about that today when we talk about board norms. There's one in there. Is there a board norm around the majority decision and supporting it once it's been made?
I think anything from the fourth one down or fifth one down is concerning.
Yeah.
I mean, eight people rated us 3 or below
Yeah.
on closed session and negotiation strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I just glossed over that one, yeah.
And the one right below that is a concerning one for me. The
Which
best
one?
interest of all the children of the entire district.
Yeah, nobody gave us a say. Or I shouldn't say no one, none of us gave us that.
Yeah, so we're viewed as very narrow personal interests.
So is that a full conversation for board norms, or?
I think these are board, for me, these fit into the board norm discussion.
Yeah, and you wonder what, when we talk about a portion of the students, yeah. I mean, if you figure, if you're just looking from the outside, you figure the portion of students you're focusing on are probably the portions of students who typically do well, and that probably most communities do focus on, and we wouldn't have marginalized populations if they weren't marginalized. And so, I mean, that's how I take that, but that's my biases, and that's where I'm coming from, like, oh, we need to focus, but I don't know what that means, because we don't know which portion whomever feels the board is focusing on. So I'm not sure what, because I know we spend a lot of time at the board table talking about students who aren't doing as well. That's probably takes up more of our time than suits are doing well.
I mean, we talk about it, but
But what happens?
exactly,
Yeah,
and I
right.
think I could just only speak to when I read that question, I think back to students in our special education community, students of color. And personally for me, I mark it low because I don't see that.
Yeah,
I truly don't see that.
Right.
And you look at the board goals, I think we've tried to do some things in the goals. Hopefully we have time to just do a quick review of that, but, Phil, you talk a lot, and we're very good about bringing up career tech education, and that's a portion of students in our community district that need to have the proper programming. And then underserved students or underperforming students, make sure they get enough time and attention. So there's all kinds of factors and elements here that should be.
I just want to, but I also think part of this could, when people were taking this, not necessarily is reflective of the body of this board, because one, board members refrain from making commitments outside of board meetings. Since we've been on, we've all been at the table. So that is like, what? I mean, I'm not understanding where that response
That
came
one
from.
And a couple other ones. I was reading way more into it than that, but I read that one as I'm out there making a commitment to somebody that, hey, yeah, at the board table, we're going to do this.
Oh,
As opposed to
gotcha.
Committing the board to things that I have
Sorry.
authority to
I read it
say.
that way
Yeah,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
But
Yes,
I
Yeah.
also thought about, well,
then
thinking
yes.
I'm too busy to do stuff, is that what it
No,
Like I thought about it,
That's absolutely right.
but I
yeah.
answered it differently.
I mean,
That's
one of the
exactly how it
benefits
should have been read.
of any survey like this.
Yeah.
Is how much validity is there when we have different interpretations.
The next to the last one there, differences and disagreements are accepted as normal. You could read that, like the rest of the sentence makes that seem like it's a positive thing. But you could read that as people are so used to us board members disagreeing with each other that that's the norm, right?
But
And absolutely, it's accepted as normal because that's just the way, right? You know what I mean? Like, I could see how that could go either way.
I mean, on the same
I
token,
honestly
though,
don't remember how I answered that.
I think it's healthy for a board to have differences and disagreements. That should be
I
part of the
should
norm,
back out
because you
that
have
sentence
7
is the
different
important part.
personalities. But I don't know that then work through rather than allowed to continue. I think that piece, that last piece of the sentence
Yeah,
is
that's the
something
important
where then that the differences and disagreements then it affects their effective decision-making processes. Because of my differences with Paul, I'm going to vote against everything he favors just because of what we disagree on. I mean, that's how I read that.
Actually, there were some comments that got into that there's factions, voting factions on the board, and that's a perception anyway that came out in some of the comments. So, yeah, work to do here, I think, let's bring some of these topics up in the norms discussion, because I think that's the area where this feedback is really relevant, and the way we can take action on it. Board development, this is kind of, middling, not great, I guess. So we already have an ISB resources, so that's good. I don't know that we have a formal orientation program, though. I mean, we do orientation, we've been doing it. I don't know if we've got like a program that we board members
We've
or-
run the gamut on that. There've been times in the past where we had a really formal board orientation process. Then there was a request not to put such a large obligation on new board members when they came in. So then we tried to do it as a responsive piece.
So what was that large piece of orientation?
Essentially
What that
walked them through every department. It was about, like 4 half-days. about
See, I don't
that.
know, for me, I would have
Yeah.
appreciated something
It was
more
many hours.
in-depth.
Yeah.
What was that?
No, I get it.
It was about
but-
4 total.
Student learning thing?
Yeah, it was
How
about-
much was involved with that? I mean,
Yeah.
was
It was about 4 total half-days for new board
sessions.
members.
Mhm.
And
And
we
we
have
did that
teachers at
on-
the table with
we-
that too, so.
We did that on top of retreats, on top of
Yeah.
everything else. That wasn't a substitute.
Yeah, you went through literally kind of, what is every department, who are the people in the department, what do they do? Walked you through HR, the business office, teaching and learning, technology.
I mean, just from
Kind
my
of gave you everything.
professional side, I mean, whenever I take over a new department, I put myself through a similar orientation for me to get a good picture of what my role is. So I don't know, for me, I would have liked to have something like that, but I get that maybe it was
Staff like it, to
time-consuming.
be honest with you, staff really like it because they know that they've got an opportunity to just say, here's who we are, here's what we do, what questions you have now before you get started, so that we can make sure that we're responsive to your needs as we're moving through.
It was, we were all kind of left to our own devices, right? I know Kim Beck, mark down who all you want to talk to,
Yeah.
and I was like, why wouldn't I mark down everybody, you know? But I
All
didn't.
people on the other
Yeah,
end look
because
at
I
it and say,
used
why
to,
didn't they
but-
mark down me? So we had a little bit of that on that
We
end.
were kind of on our own to do it. I did enjoy the conversations that I had with those folks very much. I think it's kind of interesting because we're, at work, we're currently rolling out a whole new, very prescriptive onboarding plan for all new hires.
Mhm.
Not that we're hiring people here, but they showed a lot of stats as to how successful onboarding leads to success in the job and retention. And we do have a retention problem here on the school board, so I see how that's an important thing. You know, you start out feeling like you're walking on eggshells because you're never quite sure if you're going to do the wrong thing, right? You don't want to screw up, so then you're sort of tentative to do anything. And then after a while, you're a little more willing to put yourself out there, but maybe you've already kind of backed it away from something you should have spoke up on, you know, so I think it would help. Comfort level, I think it plays to vote their convictions, as we had a low score there. All felt more comfortable from day one in the
Oh, yeah,
process.
that's interesting, yeah. So we're tackling a couple of these that are super low around the performance, the annual assessment. We just did it. That's good, it's a baseline, and so, you know,
Yeah,
we
'cause,
keep
yeah, that's
up
what
with
some
it.
I mean, the board implements plans. I mean, how long has the whole district had a strategic
Right.
plan?
But we've got a goal for our 17,
And now we have a
there's a
goal.
board development goal on there, and so, you know, we just need to put some energy and time and some focused attention. And, you know, pick a few things, not try to boil the ocean, pick a few things that are doable, and then do them.
We've got a comprehensive equity plan that we're beginning to
Yeah.
track.
So I'm gonna keep pushing down through, there's 3 more categories. The communications item. Well, I'm sorry, I always gravitate to the last question and kind of work my way up, but I don't think have a policy for media communications, do we, Steve? Or even a set of guidelines? I would like something like that, even if it's boy, when something's,
That seems like an easy thing
Yeah.
to fix.
yeah.
Compared to all of the other things that have bad scores, that one seems like an easy one.
Just-
Write a policy.
Yeah, or
Write a
maybe,
policy and have the board committed to following it.
yeah, and just, you know, some set of procedures along the way for how to adhere to it. That one feels, understandable. The one above it is gonna be some work around that trust issue. The communication amongst us is honest and free from distrust and cover-up. Man, that one, there was 1-7, that's amazing, and then really heavily focused on the lower ratings there, so.
Hopefully that's one we see improve the most, because the only way that one's gonna improve is if we all feel that we
Yeah.
trust one another.
Yeah. So that's time, work, trust, communication, relationship. Again, I think there might be some norms that we could have a discussion about that maybe could address that.
The middle one there is a little iffy too, and maybe if, the very last one specific to policy and how we communicate with the media, obviously, we don't really have a policy on how we communicate with the public either, and that happens in so many different forums, right? Like, you give a report at PPO meeting, or you run into somebody at the grocery
Thank
store,
you.
or at the board table, right? Like, it's so many different areas. But that score's pretty low, and that's a little concerning for me too. I think as a self-assessment, and sort of ignore how everybody else sees us, if we're looking at it, we don't feel like we're dealing with the public very well. It's probably because we don't feel comfortable in not having guidelines, or comfortable in some situations and maybe not others, and what exactly can or can't I say. And maybe that's part of the newness of board members too. Am I supposed to be able to talk about that, or am I not supposed to talk about it? So maybe just discomfort leads to us assessing ourselves kind of a little there. But I think, again, that may be one, well, not as easy as just writing policy for the media. It may be something as if we just kind of put some, brackets around it, like this is what is or is not appropriate, and we all feel more comfortable in how we talk to the public then.
Actually, that could be a dimension of orientation. Is, and we got a little bit of that ISB orientation session, right? It's a board you really shouldn't be talking or committing to these kinds of things because it's completely out of your span of control. You know what I mean? Some of those things are helpful. Maybe.
Would you believe one of the scenarios that I talked about happened to me?
Really?
the other day?
Athletic director or something, or a coach, or.
That's what I was thinking.
Somebody wanted to talk to me about not having someone hired as a coach.
You're on school board, Sean. You can make this
I was just
happen.
like, wow, am I being tested right now? Where's
That's
Harry?
an undercover ISB person.
What's happening?
That's
Well,
funny.
and I think when we get into this, if we are to make a media policy, we should involve social media as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
Because,
I've made
yeah.
mistakes on social media,
Because,
unthinking,
I-
so.
I think
Gosh.
commenting on social media
Yeah.
is extremely dangerous,
Yeah.
especially when it's a forum where others are a part of, and it can be a violation without any intent.
Yes, of the open meeting, because more than 3 of us are participating. But I see that, and I'm like, I've quit. I still watch, but I
Well-
quit posting because I am just now super sensitive about that.
In order to stay within the law and everything, social media is extremely difficult medium, and
I think you're right on. Social media has to be part of that media policy. I think you're dead on. I'm sorry if I feel like I'm rushing us. I just want to keep us moving. I want to get into that norms discussion. I really, really do. And because I think that is one of our action plans of this, but I think it might be through other things. Board superintendent staff relations. I mean, this trust theme was all over the comments. It's clearly here quantitatively called out as an issue. And then back to kind of board expectations, and maybe this is a board norm. In fact, I think it is in the board norms right now around we are not individuals. We cannot direct as individuals. We operate as a board. And I'm sensitive that in the past that may not have been always the case, that there was individuals or small groups leading and not everyone was aware of what was going on. And anyway, I think there's some norms stuff in there that we need to look at this afternoon. We talked to some, Steve, earlier this week around the process for evaluation and goal setting. I think when we look at the Appendix 2 and try to synchronize the timelines for that, that might help on the one around the clear performance expectations. I don't know, just thinking out loud that at least a good people process there.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like we are doing just starting to get some of that stuff a little more, for this board, to regular and planned, and what I'm hoping we see in a year is a little more clumping of scores. And, because this one, for me, it's just, the whole category is just really all over the place.
Yeah, and it's because we've got lots of different people responding, not just three, so.
I'm gonna, maybe I'll be the bad guy for a little bit here. I look at, like that last one there, and some of the other ones we talk about between board members and board members. And there's a lot of negative scores there. And I know during a campaign process, twice now, there was a lot of talk of, we need to change that trust problem, right? And it seems to me, and I'm going to lump myself in there with everybody else I'm going to throw on the bus, that we are all really good at assuming that everybody else has the problem. And in order to actually change climates of trust and mutual respect and how we interact with each other, we can't all assume that the other ones are all going to change, right? I'm not here to fix all of you guys. I can fix me to the best of my ability, and I would ask you all to help me do that. But you guys all around this table, and even out in the audience, right, because we have a trust problem with the community and the board and administration, right, that everybody has to figure out what they can do to help the situation and not just keep saying, well, this person's untrustworthy, so it's them. Because that's the easy way. And if we're really going to change any of these really, really bad scores in a lot of different areas, we have to take the hard way and figure out how to change ourselves. And so if I am acting in a way that is distrustful or not being respectful to all of you, call me out on it right there in the moment. And I think that has come up in some of the comments, that people want to be addressed in the moment if there's something going on that somebody has a problem with. I think that's fair for just about anything, that if there's a problem, we should just address it right then and there and move on from it, because a lot of times we end up walking away from the table and we stew on it for a while. I personally have done that at various meetings that we've had. I've walked away and stewed on it for a while, and then I grumbled to myself. And what I generally am most mad about is that I didn't say something in the moment. So I'm going to try and be better at that, and I would ask you all to do better at that too. That's my rant about a lot of the stuff that I see as similarities with all of our bad scores, is we're all going to be looking at others and say they're the bad ones. I'm doing it right, everybody else is doing it wrong. And I know there's a lot of things there that I am not doing right. So I'm going to try and do better. That's my rant. I'm done.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Sean.
That maybe just, that might be a norm, what you just said, so we can distill it down
Look in the mirror.
about, look in the mirror. You have an issue, address it real time, in person, not around the table to everyone else, but the person you have an issue with, go to the person you have an issue with, have a conversation. Work it out, build a relationship. And trust will build, hopefully, as the relationships build, and we're consistent, and we hold each other accountable, and we support each other, because we're all gonna make mistakes, of course we are.
You gotta be willing to mend the fences. As if you're not willing to do that.
There won't happen. And maybe if you can't do it in the moment, because sometimes it's harder, or you don't think about it.
Yeah,
But I think
that's
the
fair.
important thing is that you do talk to the person directly,
Yeah.
rather than just venting and talking to everyone else except that one person that you have an issue with. And I know, I'm just speaking to myself, because I know I have to, that's something for me to work on too, is just to be real honest. And if I can't do it in the moment, at least make sure I am direct with somebody when I, have an issue or something.
Yeah. And it goes for, not just board members, but Steve and your team and community members that we engage with. I mean, honestly, right? I mean, it's building those relationships that will be the glue that helps us be successful.
To bring us up a notch, I will say, someone I find who does that really well is, this is my personal opinion, Matt Degner does that really well. I think when we're having meetings, we're sort of going down the rabbit hole sometimes.
We never do that, come
He will
on.
stop and say, I'm not sure what you're asking. Instead of just continuing to fake an answer to the question, he will stop us and ask us what we're really trying to get to. And I appreciate that from him, because a lot of times we just start spouting, you have these random thoughts in your head and you just keep going down whatever tangent and you've totally lost track of the point you were making in the first place. So I think he does a good job bringing us back in line, so I'm going to turn him on this. I work that way.
I think that's good. So we'll come back to some of that in the norms discussion. There's a comment, I was scrolling through trying to find one of the free response comments, because there was a comment that kind of hit on that around that self-reflection too, and not, it's a sense of look in the mirror, you know, and I couldn't put in that real fast. Any more on board superintendent staff relations? How about team building? Apparently this was our lowest scoring item. Any comments on this one?
I just think it's the same
Same.
stuff. And we were talking about trust and relationships and team. Kind of what's wrong.
I think one thing too, and maybe this is a theme around that orientation, is this, because there's the second and third from the bottom, the board members will come on responsible view of the board's role, and board members will have similar expectations for the role of board members. But I do think that just making, it's a bit, again, we're policy, we're not administration, what does that mean? And, through an orientation process, really kind of, the ISB thing tried to get at that and gave us some examples and scenarios, but maybe there's more of that, making sure we're all on the same page about that, when it needs to be a board member versus a staff member versus a teacher versus a community member. I mean, we have a specific role here. What does that mean to us? And how then we consistently work together to play that role?
The third one I find interesting, that there's 4 6s and 4 2s. That's just kind of an interesting dynamic to me.
The third board members are able to disagree on matters, that one?
Yeah. The fourth one, right in the middle
Yeah,
there,
that
the
is
3.2 average, you feel other board members have confidence. That's an interesting way to look at it. It's not asking do you trust everybody else. You're not even asking if people trust you. You're asking if you feel if the other ones trust you. And I find that very interesting, because I may have been the 7 on there, to be perfectly honest. Because I feel that you guys trust me to do the right thing. And maybe I'm naive in that way, but I think everybody should feel that the rest of us have trust in them.
There's 4 1s on that one, I think. And
Yeah, but I think you're right. It goes to all the other stuff, right? And how we
Yeah.
look on the outside and looking in, but that number should be way higher.
So any other observations? I mean, I don't know that we want to go through all the comments. I'm sure everyone read all of them. I think there were definitely themes repeated throughout.
I printed them out online.
You did?
Yeah, they're pieces of art.
I
Make
mean,
you feel good about it.
I appreciated a number of comments that we got. I mean, people took time with this and really responded. So, so I wonder if we, because I really do want us to hone in on kind of 3 to 5 things that we want to work on, but maybe we go to the norms first, because we had a variety of comments that came out that I think are relevant to the norms, and I do think we need to do that. They weren't revised, they haven't been revised since 2015, it doesn't look like, so it's been a while. We've got all this data, we just talked about some of this stuff. Does that sound okay to folks to go to the norms next? and tackle that one. I want to make sure we have time for it, and then once we work on some norms, then if there's some other themes that we want to cover, then we can get some action plans around those. So, but let's turn over to the norms section.
Can I give just a real quick, just feeling from reading the comments? You
Yes.
know, I mean, they are split into questions of what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses,
Yeah.
basically, so that you can see that there's positives and negatives. But what is just a general rule, as I kind of read through them, that a lot of the negative things seem very targeted, very specific to something that has jaded someone in the past, right? Like a very specific thing has happened, and
Yeah.
they've latched onto that. The positives seemed a little more holistic in, I don't know, throw out words from campaign, hope. Like, they seemed hopeful as a broad range that things are going in the right direction kind of stuff, as opposed to this one specific thing was good. I mean, those were big generalities, but I felt like that was a positive thing in general, that specifically there are bad things. As a whole, there are good things. That's kind of how I felt that it went. So. Carry on. Norm.
I think you're emerging as our data guy. Do you know what I mean? Any other comments on the observations? I love this stuff. I'm sorry. For me, it's rich, it's helpful, it tells a story, it gives us something to work from.
I think a year from now, this is gonna be, now I think it's a little hard because the board,
Yeah.
we were all new, or we talked about the old board, and I think a year from now, under this board, we're gonna have.
It's us.
This is, because then we have our baseline, boy, where has it improved, where has it dipped?
Yeah.
What stayed the same?
Yeah.
And what does that say?
Yeah.
And so, thank you for being the spark plug.
Yeah, I love this stuff. Okay, norms. I'm trying to find the document. Can we pull it up?
Yep.
Oh, no. Yeah,
This-
norms, goals. Norms, okay. So, 2015, were you here, Phil, when these norms were done, or Lori, were you guys on the board when these norms were done
Yeah.
before? Can you just describe quickly the process, how we did it before, and? I mean, just from context, I'm just curious how we got here.
I think there were some ideas on, so there were 5 new members.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, out of 7, 5 were new. And I think there were some ideas about what wasn't working with the prior board, and some thoughts about what might happen with the incoming board based on who was elected. And so some thoughts were put together. And I will say that there was not agreement on all of these.
Ah, okay.
So it might
that's
appear
helpful
here
context
that
for me.
everybody was in agreement, but there was not agreement on all of these.
But then, you know what, Laura, we went back and did this again in October of 2016.
I think we reviewed them, but I don't know that we changed them.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is we reviewed them again, so if there was things that needed to be taken out, they would have been taken out then.
Yeah, I mean,
And then we covered them again in
I
the
think-
spring retreat then.
you know, I don't think it's any secret that that there was a feeling on the prior board that not everybody's opinion was valued equally. So, you know.
So we have a chance to change that. If that was a past perception, that's not one that we want to have going forward, especially as we talk about trust and we talk about building a team and, advocating for students and all those things. We all are elected board members and need to have our voices heard here. So help that, I appreciate the context, and I appreciate there was opportunities throughout, since 2015 of October, to review these and change them. I don't know if it's useful to go through each one and kind of say, as I looked at them, there's a couple things I want to add, kind of that were along the lines of some of the things that we've been talking, coming out of the assessment results, but some of these don't feel as useful, as relevant maybe as they did a couple years ago. That was just my opinion, but, we're just like worthy of calling out on the board. But should we just start at the top and work our way through? I don't know any way to do it, honestly. So, no surprises. As board members, what do we think about having a no surprise kind of norm?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, right, that's a both way kind of a thing. I think
Yeah.
that's a good.
It sort of starts suggesting, well, I live this as much as I possibly can. I know I fall down on it and I'm not perfect, so I would ask for everyone's help in keeping me honest here. But in my professional world, with my family members, gosh, you know, if something's gonna come up that's tough, I try to give people a heads up. It's my biggest driving policy, if you will, personal policy for our executive team meetings at ACT, because we can get on stuff, and if I have a presentation or a team member of mine has a presentation that's got tough stuff about another department, man, we're in that other leader's office saying, hey, we're going to present this on Tuesday, and just need you to have a heads up and have a contact. I mean, we do it religiously because you don't want to throw people under the bus. And that's what the gotcha stuff feels like, is that people are getting thrown under the bus or not given a chance to adequately prepare or, you know, understand. And so I'm a big advocate of no surprises, huge advocate of no surprises.
I would agree with that thought that surprises aren't really helpful for anyone. I find that as the top line on there, it's a bit redundant because the same stuff is written on individual things later on, right? Like it's review the board pack as soon as possible and ask your questions in advance. And then talk under the one voice. It has the words no surprises.
Yeah.
Right? Like as a standalone thing, it's kind of redundant. But as a,
Or
as a
maybe
thing,
it's
obviously, I think when we want to try and go back to all the stuff we just covered in our survey, we're pretty low scores on the board being prepared for meetings. So I think the be proactive part is an important thing. I don't know how that not having surprises is addressing us not being prepared, but being proactive does. But that's written there under that board packet. So I don't think gotcha moments either. But I'm sure that means it's on the standalone.
No surprises might not need its own standalone, is what you're suggesting. It's kind of a theme throughout many of the other ones.
That's my take on it. But
And so I'm
not against it.
going to step back for just half a second and kind of level set on what a norm is. Sorry. It's not a policy, it's not a procedure. For me, it's something that defines how we're going to behave. And is that fair? It's sort of driving behavior. And so in that category, you know, doing things to prevent surprises. So maybe no surprises is maybe not the behavioral thing, but, you know, being proactive, asking questions early, being prepared. I'd love to chat as we go through here around, you know, those personal conversations, building relationships, not talking around people, going to the person, the point that you were making, Sean. That's a big part of no surprises. I mean, no surprises evolves from that, right?
Yeah, because to me, I think the intent of this is the gotcha piece, like to avoid that, because I could be prepared, and part of my, if I was going against these board norms, part of my preparation could be to have a really
I got my
gotcha,
gotcha question on.
right? Like that would be being prepared, but it would go against the spirit of this thing, which is like, don't sabotage people. Because I also don't want to feel like if something comes to me at the board table and I have an honest question that I just thought of that's relevant, I don't want to be like, oh, I can't ask this because I'm not prepared. But if the spirit is, you know, this question came to me, and maybe I don't need an answer right now, but maybe in 2, and I feel like we've been doing that as things come up. We're like, you know, in 2 weeks, do you think you'd be ready to come up with some information, and here's what we want. And it doesn't mean I'm not necessarily prepared. It just might be that I just thought of it, or new information came out when somebody was speaking. Because I don't want this to be like, you can never ask a
Yeah,
question that hasn't been vetted previously.
Agreed.
An unscripted question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Agreed.
scripted, but we don't
Agreed.
want to be like,
And if the way I see this historically, when we first came on, Gloria and I, Paul came on later, at the time, Lynch was part of the ISBA video that we got when we went, or at least when I went to Prairie School, and he was the No Surprises question. And it was a big thing for him, huge thing for him. And essentially, he wanted a script that would be followed. In my view, this is all my view. And, you know, we also had a time too when packets were coming out more regularly on Friday or Thursday night late. And when you have things that are added, we all have busy lives. I'm not saying mine's any busier than anybody else's, but when the information was coming out then, and it's a weekend, and for myself, I'm not a real email type person, I'm more of a talk with someone person. I can't call somebody up on the weekend and try and get an answer to a question. So many times it's Monday trying to get a question answered before a Tuesday meeting, which that person may not get back to you until 3 or 4 in the afternoon on the Tuesday before the meeting. So there was some time pressure in that. And sometimes we add things on Monday to a Tuesday meeting, which then shortens your time to come up with a question and everything that way. So definitely, and I think you said it very eloquently, that, you know, sometimes through the discussion, something comes to you. And I know many times I've got something that kind of nags at me a little bit, and I say, yeah, I probably should have asked that ahead of time. But in the discussion, it comes that, yeah, I need to ask this. And is it, and I think that that's our role as the community representatives to ask those questions.
I think JP used the word that, for me, goes along when I look at the no surprises. It's the sabotaging part. Not to have some type of gotcha moment that's set out to sabotage the direction and work of the board or the district. And I don't know if we need to, because I think that's sometimes for me, when I think of questions at the last minute, it's like I don't want it to appear as though I'm trying to sabotage the direction that the conversation is going, to insert my personal view or my personal feelings in the work. So I wouldn't be opposed to seeing something more in line with avoiding sabotaging. I'm sorry.
and I think this is, to that point, my guess is that some of that's going to be in some of the other stuff as well.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if she's okay. Oh, boy. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. The flu is really a hideous, horrible thing. I'm distracted now, sorry. Yeah.
Take a 10-minute break.
Should we take a 10-minute break? Yeah, let's just do that. Hold that thought.
Do these get recorded?
Yeah.
Are we still on?
I can pause it.